Hey, ladies, welcome to The Power of the Ask, the podcast where we ditch the waiting and embrace the asking for what we truly deserve.
Welcome to The Power of the Ask.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Power of the Ask podcast, the podcast that helps you get what you need financially and personally. We are so glad you're here today. My name is Lisa Zeiderman. I am managing partner of Miller Zeiderman, and I'm one of the co-hosts with my dear friend Precious.
And I'm Precious Williams, the killer pitch master and proud founder and CEO of the Perfect Pitch Group. And welcome back. This week, we are so excited to introduce you to Bonnie Wan. AdAge's 2022 Chief Strategy Officer of the Year, Bonnie Wan, is a partner and head of brand strategy at Goodby, Silverstein Partners. Over 3 decades, she's guided iconic brands with creative briefs. In 2010, Bonnie created the Life Brief, a profound practice that transformed her life and marriage. Okay. Today, Bonnie shares the Life Brief through keynote talks, workshops, and retreats at events like South by Southwest. You already know she's a baddie. And in Goop Health. She works with top organizations such as Accenture, Apple, and Google. Outside of her professional life, Bonnie explores nature with her family and her dog, Charlie. I love the name Charlie. Welcome back, Bonnie. We're so happy to have you here today to share your journey and to teach our listeners about the power behind the ask. Bonnie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh my gosh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me, the two of you. 3 badass ladies. I don't know, you've said it all, Precious. I am an immigrant from Taipei, Taiwan. I grew up in Los Angeles. I went to university in New York, and that's where I started my advertising career. And I don't know, I've always been driven by a fixation on human behavior. What drives people? And especially what drives people in the face of turbulence, turmoil, life or death situations. You know, Amelia Earhart was my first heroine at, second grade, I think. That was my first biography. And Martin Luther King, Helen Keller. I've always been fascinated by what propels someone to face risk, to be fueled by purpose, even in life or death situations.
Wow, that is quite amazing. And you've named some people who certainly have faced a lot of risk and adversity, and certainly made their name out there nonetheless. So good for you. You have been recognized as AdAge's 2022 Chief Strategy Officer of the Year. What does that achievement mean to you, Bonnie, and how has it impacted your career?
It's such an honor. I think it's really meaningful for me to hold that honor, to have held that honor, because I don't think I'm the archetypal chief strategy officer in advertising, or at least in my 3 decades in the business. It's always been British men. And I've never felt that I fit that mold. I'm certainly not British. I'm certainly not a man. But I think as someone who embodies a lot of traits and qualities and even value systems and beliefs that are counter to those I have been raised by in the industry, it was a surprise and an honor, and maybe to me a point of evidence or signal that the industry is changing and that business is changing and that we are starting to embrace some new archetypes in the world of business. And I will say that I've always been someone who puts people first. As a strategist, I've always looked for the answer among the room, work to make the whole room smarter rather than to take up the air and oxygen. These are not necessarily the traits I grew up with in terms of my predecessors or the leaders before me. I've had the privilege of working under some amazing British men and American men, all men though. And I think I really questioned myself in taking on the leadership role, as the lead strategist, as the head of the department. In fact, I resisted it for many years because I didn't believe I had the qualities and the traits. I couldn't mirror the men before me. And even in my first 18 months in the role, I tried to mimic others that I thought I tried to mirror the standards of excellence that I had grown up with. And it wasn't until I released all of that and surrendered to my own way of leadership that I found my rhythm and I found my strengths. And to be honored in that role, for Chief Strategy Officer of the Year, it was, I think it said a lot for how far we've come as an industry.
Bonnie, Queen Bonnie, you brought up Amelia Earhart as your first shero that you read about when you were in the second grade. Do you see yourself as a shero? Because I can tell you, we see you as a shero and as a visionary. What did it take to actually get you here? What experiences, what life experiences, what things did you go through to actually become a shero to us?
Thank you for that. I don't see myself as a shero.
I didn't think you did, but it's time you see yourself like that, or we wouldn't have you here.
Thank you. I'm gonna receive that, and I'm going to sit with it and chew on it and embrace it, because that's a practice that I'm actively practicing right now. What got me here? I think Amelia, Helen Keller, sheroes like that have always reminded me that when I lack confidence, do it anyways. Right? Because I think I struggle, like many women I meet and work with now through the life brief, with a lack of confidence or self-doubt or inner critics or all the things, right, that hamper us. And I don't see this in a lot of men, although I'm starting to also in my own son and in, men who are vulnerable and open to sharing their own inner experience. But for many, many years, I did not experience this in men, what we call imposter syndrome, or, all the self-doubt. And I've realized that if you are a marginalized person, or you belong to a marginalized group, or you've experienced personal trauma, you meet the world with doubt, because I think there is a protectiveness or a fear as you enter any situation of, am I safe? It is the question that precedes you. And I think when I look at those sheroes of my past, of my childhood, they remind me that confidence is overrated. We're not all born confident. We're not all raised confident, because in the face of trauma, right? Power. I like to study power. And when you are marginalized, what we're really saying is you are under the thumb of power, and power has abused you in some way. And that removes our confidence. And so I like to talk about courage instead, because courage is the ability to keep acting on your conviction, even when you lack confidence.
So I'm going to ask you, before I delve into what role finances play in the journey of your self-discovery and clarity, I'm going to ask you first to just tell us about Life Brief and what was the turning point that led you to develop Life Brief, and how did it overcome your own dissatisfaction or doubt, if that is true. But first, can you just tell us what Life Brief is?
Yeah. So I've been a strategist for 30 years.
You don't look a day
hard to admit.
30. What
Hard
you
to admit.
mean?
Yeah, 30 years. And it's a creative brief. The Life Brief is a creative brief for your life, because I've spent 3 decades writing creative briefs. And at the essence of a creative brief, it's clarity. It's sharp, sticky clarity that drives action. So The act of living different parts of your life, because there's not one life brief. You can life brief any and all parts of your life. So I have many life briefs, but it is the practice of getting crystal clear about what you want in any part of your life. So I've written a marriage brief, a leadership brief, a wealth brief, a parenting brief, and they are ever evolving. But it is the practice of being very clear and connected to my innermost truth about what I want, what matters most in this part of my life, so that it can help me navigate turbulence, navigate unpredictability, complexity, ambiguity through that compass.
I am loving the life brief. As a 45-year-old woman, I feel like there've been different preciouses along the way. And so the life brief would have gave me clarity. I didn't know the right questions to even ask to understand how to get to clarity. And a lot of the queens that watch it or listen to our podcast, they're maybe struggling in a lot of areas of their life and trying to figure out what truly matters at this stage if it was never a priority before. How does the life brief address that? And also, we're living in difficult financial times, whether the news wants to say it. How does a life brief even deal with that?
Well, you said the words, right? Questions. How do I ask the right questions? So as a strategist, questions are my best friend. And the practice of the life brief is starting with penetrating or driving questions. And not all questions are created equal. Some questions drop you deeper, faster, and get right in there in the truth. And others just stay on the surface and leave you chasing your tail, running in circles, right? My favorite wealth brief questions are, what is enough? And can you translate enough into tangible financial terms? When my husband actually asked that question in the kitchen in 2021, I believe, we were making lunch together, and he said, do we know what enough is? And I thought, oh, that's a juicy question. And then we defined it together tangibly. And as the single and sole breadwinner of our family, as soon as we were able to answer that, two things happened. One, the monkey came off my back. Ooh, the infinite striving, the keeping up with the Joneses or the Kardashians, whoever you want to keep up with, right? On social media, who are you following? That just slipped right off my back because we had a tangible definition for what enough looked like. And the second thing that happened is we realized we have more than enough. And that opened up and allowed me to take our scarcest resources, which is my time and my attention, and redirect them in other ways than making money. And I am now actively working to get down out of hustle culture because I know what enough looks like. I know that it's right there at our fingertips. And yes, it will take a little bit more work, but I don't have to give all my attention to the financial treadmill that we were on before. And then the second question was, if we could be rich in only one way, what do we want to be rich in? What's our true wealth brief? And my wealth brief is to be rich in relationships.
Clock it. Ladies, are you ready to take control of your future? Do you dream of financial stability, freedom, and a life that truly deserves you?
For over 20 years, Savvy Ladies has empowered women from all walks of life to make smart financial choices, achieve our goals, and build a brighter future.
We built Savvy Ladies as a community of women supporting women. We offer free financial educational programs, a trusted helpline, and guidance and advice from America's top financial professionals.
You can access the financial helpline at savvyladies.org or where you get your apps under Savvy Ladies. Savvy Ladies equips you with the knowledge,
confidence, and support you need to thrive. So don't wait. Join Savvy Ladies today and start building your financial confidence and well-being now.
So you know that Savvy Ladies is really about financial empowerment. And so you said a whole lot of things that are so interesting, right? What is enough? And I'm going to ask you first, as you went through this journey, essentially, of self-discovery about what is enough, how did you make the determination of what enough was?
Well, lots of life brief practice, there's an exercise, my favorite one in the book, The Life Brief, which is writing our eulogy. When you write your eulogy, you begin with the end. And when you begin with the end, now you can play your life backwards, right? And say what really matters. That the eulogy brings out what you really want to be remembered for. And there's Tom DeLonge, who's a Harvard Business School professor, talks about the tension between our eulogy values and our resume values. Our eulogy values are what we want to be remembered for at the end of our lives. Our resume values are what we want the outside world to see us at in the moment. It's all of these achievements. Neither are better or right. It's the tension between the two that acts as the fuel that propels us forward. And we need that tension because we're managing both, in our lives. And so having done that practice, it made answering the question, what is enough, easier than most. But I work with a lot of people on these same questions. So I recently worked with a VC founder around his money brief. And that was very interesting because he's in the business of money. His whole life is around money. But he came from a really modest Midwest background. Auto worker dad, I think a lawyer or a teacher mom, just really a different set of values. And now he lives in a whole different lifestyle, highly urban, around a lot of money. He's has a family. And he said he wakes up with anxiety all the time, about money. And so we're trying to pinpoint where's the tension point, what's happening. And after just a few minutes of conversation, he said, in the last few years, or every year in the last few years, I've realized that I need less money to be genuinely happy. And so, oh, interesting. Okay. So what's happening in the recent years? And he said, well, we've moved neighborhoods. We now live around multimillionaires. We have dinner and we go to, vacations with these people. My kids are in really Tony schools, we're buying them. So I realized, oh, I see. You are learning that you need less to be genuinely happy, but your bills are going up and up. Ah, bingo, tension point. There's the tension. Now, if you want to now aim your curiosity into that tension point and start to get clear about what shift do you want to make within that space of tension that would help alleviate this anxiety. And that's where his money brief started.
You have truly, I feel like my mind is like there's is going off in my mind right now. So I want to ask you this question. So many of us are defined as women, men, by our achievements, by our accomplishments, who our friends are, all those sort of things. What do you want to be defined by? And what's the question you wish people asked you and they never do?
I'll speak to the second question first. I find people ask very few questions these days on a whole. I'm not sure which question I'd like to be asked. I just like to be asked some questions. other than podcast interviews where you ask very good, it's your business to ask good questions. But I find, at cocktail parties, we're in a social media culture where everyone is about what they want to say,
Yeah.
what they want to post, what they want to, stand for. And I find the more successful, the higher level success I'm surrounded by, the fewer questions I get, the fewer genuine questions, because people all want a platform from which they speak. And I think the dearth of curiosity is a problem for me. But I try to enter conversations with a lot of questions. It's part of my natural curiosity, but I also find that it is what creates community and richness of relationship. Tell me your first question again. What was the first question?
The first question kind of leans into that. We are often defined by the resume, the bio, the
yes.
reading of that, and that's supposed to tell so much. How do you want people to see you beyond all of that? That's a question that I've been dealing with for the last few years, is to not allow the bio to be all there is of me when there's so many things I'd rather be defined by.
Integrity and humanity are the two that come to mind. I find that very hard to lead with those traits first. And I would add generosity in there. I think we live in a business culture that too often uses the excuse that it's just the cost of business. And I think that is a permission slip for leaders to get away from their values, and especially the values of humanity, integrity, generosity. It has become the permission slip across business to do some really inhumane things, to not put people first. And I think we accept it in our business culture.
Or to
And
make
that's
everything
okay.
transactional instead of
Yes.
relational.
Yes, because we're feeding the shareholders, we're feeding the bottom line. There's growth expectations, and I have led long enough to know that you can do good business and be good to people at the same time. That's not to say that contractions don't happen, that we have to do hard things, but you can do hard things with humanity first. I know that to be true, and I'm not buying the bullshit that it's just in the name of business.
So, Bonnie, can you share how your tool, the Creative Brief, has helped iconic brands align with their essential virtues?
Yeah, companies have to move fast, right? We all know that. It's peak volatility. Lots of disruptive competitors coming into the market. Leaders are in high stakes situations all the time. Clarity is the thing that allows you to pivot and flex in uncertain times, and to know what you stand for and where to act from. However, in many organizations, there is not clarity, one, nor alignment through the organization around the clarity. So I lead a service, an offering in our agency called Brand Camp, which is a brand accelerator. It's a brand strategy accelerator that helps companies get to the essence of their purpose and act on that through any part of their organization. But what it requires is not, a lot of companies offer brand strategy. That's a universal output, of great strategic partners. The key, though, to me is alignment. The magic sauce to actionable strategy is alignment. And alignment requires a sense of authorship and ownership among the leaders. So the C-suite, not just the marketers, not just the CMO, but you need leaders. And this is, again, time and attention are our scarcest resources. And leaders do not come together to actually debate out the real issues, to share their hot takes, to give spaciousness, to work out those hot takes, and to come to alignment. So it's not just about getting to great output from a brand strategy standpoint, because you could have great output, but if no one's aligned around it, it becomes what I call shelf strategy. It exists in a deck, in a laptop, in the system. Nobody refers to it. But when leaders come around the table together and feel a sense of authorship, ownership, and alignment, then action happens as soon as they leave the room. And that action cascades through the organization very fast when you have leadership who believes in, owns the strategy.
You know what, Queen Bonnie, this is why I love co-hosting the Power to Ask podcast powered by Savvy Ladies with Lisa. Number one, we're not afraid to test things. We're not afraid to ask certain questions because we don't want this podcast to sound like everybody else. And we also want the queens and the kings who watch, because listen, we just had a king who watched our last episode who put something in the chat. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing because he was listening intently for things that he doesn't usually get to hear from queens like you. I love the fact that you talked about alignment and asking questions and understanding this is a process and it takes work. If you've been doing this 30 years, there's no way you knew this at year 1 or year 5 or year 10. Just like I didn't know about speaking, I feel like, until my 20th year. I was doing it, but I don't know if I really grasped it. As a final question that we ask our Power of the Ask guests, we want to know, why is the power of the ask so important to women, especially financially? And why is it even more critical today?
Well, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's the first thing. It's the guarantee that you're not going to get what you want. Asking is a practice. I invite all of my employees, my strategists, to ask. I say, come in and negotiate with me. And know that you have more than 2 cards to play. You have a full deck. And practice getting to know which cards in the deck are most important to you. Which ones matter most, and get creative about it. We always think that the only bargaining chips are money and title. Not true. Not true. As someone who has 4 kids, I have had different chapters in my career where, again, time was of essence, right? Living in a different city that was more cost effective to our big family was important. Having flexibility was important. You know, there were many different cards that played in different chapters. And know what you're worth. Know what's sacred and what's non-negotiable. Know what's worth fighting for. And know what you're willing to trade off in order to get it. And that kind of clarity allows you to pivot your own career, your own asks in different ways when the time calls for it.
As you can see, when it comes to the Power of the Ask podcast powered by Savvy Ladies, we bring the best guests who take the mask off and really talk about their lives, the decisions that they've made that have gotten them to the top of their fields in corporate America and entrepreneurship. You just heard from Bonnie Wan. And did you hear the clarity in the questions she asked herself? You just heard about her winning 2022 AdAge Award. She's a shero. And we're going to keep bringing guests like this over and over again. So we want you to subscribe. We want you to tell a friend to what? Tell a friend. Because none of our guests are the same, just like the queens who watch. We want to bring you the type of guests that inspire you, that have you making different decisions, and financially you profit from it. You profit in your financial life. You profit in your regular life. You profit in your career because you deserve it. So at the Power of the Ad podcast, as one half of the co-host of the Power of the Ad podcast, we want you to keep coming back. We get better and better and better because of you and the questions that you would like to see asked, so that you can ask yourself these questions in your life. Thank you for coming back to another exciting edition of the Power of the Ask podcast, powered by what? Savvy Ladies, all about your financial empowerment.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Power of the Ask, ladies.
Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to spread the love with #PowerOfTheAsk.